Welcome to the Startups Leaders Show, where we learn lessons from startup founders and executives. I am your host, Lisa Dreher, and I am excited to introduce our guest for today, Dan Stachelski. He is the co-founder and CEO of Innovate and the founder and CEO of ICAN. How are you doing, Dan? Thanks for being here today.
I'm doing really well. Excited to be here and be able to talk with you today.
Yeah, me too. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and then Innovate and ICAN.
Yep, for sure. Happy to. So I am a trained speech language pathologist. So I'm out in the Seattle area, did my undergraduate up in Bellingham, and then went to Illinois actually from a graduate program. And actually in that process, I helped create a rural outreach program for kids on the spectrum in Southern Illinois. And so the work that I do focusing on kids and focusing on kids with autism, suspected autism, has roots that go really far back. I actually don't know if I want to say how far back, but it's always been a part of my life. So when I came back to Washington State, I worked in a couple different practices, but I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I really wanted to be able to create something that supported this community, and that's kind of where I took off, starting with ICAN. It's a center-based program where we offer speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, basically all the core services that people are looking for when they have a diagnosis, not just of autism, but of any developmental disability. And I've operated that for 16 years now, have a couple locations and about 110 staff right now. We serve about 400 families and have anywhere between 20 to 30,000 appointments a month. So it's actually quite a complex operation.
Oh my gosh. And ICAN stands for?
International Center for Autism and Neurodevelopment.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's kind of how we Innovate got started too, is that the biggest barricade that families experience with ASD is getting in for a diagnosis. So we started offering diagnostic services back in 2013 when there actually were only two places to go. So we became the third. And the thing that we always tried to focus on was keeping the time frame down to get in for your first appointment and therefore get your diagnosis, because it can take time for the testing to be completed and the report to be written, et cetera. And what it does when you get the diagnosis is it opens up access to your medical benefit that allows you to get the 25 to 40 hours a week that's typically recommended for kids when they have a diagnosis. So it's a huge, huge component of their success outcomes, and the earlier we get them, the better the outcomes are, and so on. No matter what I did, I threw everything at that. More people, better people, innovative processes, and it didn't matter. I always ended up in a place where it was 6 months to a year to get in for your first appointment. And it wasn't solving the problem, no matter what we did. In fact, it's still antiquated. In fact, one of the largest medical centers focusing on kids has a 4,000 kid wait list currently to be able to get in for their diagnosis. That story is pretty common across the country and actually across the globe. It's worse if you go up to Canada. And so it really came down to, we need to reinvent this. We can't take the wheel that currently exists and keep moving forward. We have to change it. And the benefit of technology and how far it's come was really supportive of actually making something that would work for the families and for the community to get in faster for a diagnosis. So that's kind of the idea behind the second company, which is Innovate. And the vision of that company is Care Made Easy. And so we use technology to support access to care affordably for families. And we're focusing specifically on kids on the spectrum to start with.
Okay, this is amazing. And this is when I came across your organization, what really piqued my interest is how you are using technology to support the families. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you are using technology to support these families with diagnoses and further support.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Technology's been, I'm an early adopter, and I think that actually works well in this environment because you have to find ways to become more efficient in business because you're always kind of running against a clock. Your operating expenses go up and you have to find ways to keep those margins up and sustain your business. So technology is a huge part of that. I'm an early adopter, and so those things kind of aligned. So we've done things like we were the first to use the Connect from Microsoft Xbox in treatment. And we utilize that to gain the interest of kids, to keep them motivated, but also it supported achieving goals because they had motor skills they had to learn. They had to have comprehension, language. And it was a really great way to access these kids and actually help them attain their goals. So kind of we've done a lot of little things like that. And then we also have done big things where we were the first to integrate a EMR system, which is, it's standard of care these days. And so our clinicians weren't writing on paper anymore. It's dated, that's back in 2013, but at the time it wasn't very common that people had these systems at all. And then finally, moving towards Innovate, there was a benefit of COVID in that it forced us to use technology that was currently available and innovate in that space so that people could access care because they weren't able to come physically to us. In fact, we had a plan to integrate technology further into our company, and the rollout of it was like in the process of getting it there was 6 months. And when they shut down things in Washington State, we had 3 days to launch. So we had to adapt very quickly. But it also opened up the opportunity for us to get this technology out to people and have them using it. So we can cut out a significant portion of the steps, the complexity, actually even the insurance in the middle to be able to provide access to this care that is needed. And because we've done this virtually, because they've done research on this, we know that you can accomplish the task of giving a diagnosis on a virtual basis. So you actually don't even need to go into someone's home to do that. So there's a ton of efficiencies that come with it, and it's a 10-time reduction in the cost of doing this. Families pay $4,000 to $10,000 for a diagnosis, and it doesn't need to cost that much, and it doesn't need to take that time because it can take up to a year to actually get the diagnostic report. It's antiquated. It doesn't need to be that way, and technology has allowed us to do that, to find a way.
Wow, that's really exciting. So how does the process work? If I have a child that might be struggling, what would I do to engage with your organization?
Yep. So we have an application, and it's available on the Android store right now. We're working on getting it back up in the Apple store currently, and it's really simple. We guide you through the entire process. You download the application. When you have concerns, we start with a screening because there's actually about 30% of the time kids that come in for a diagnosis don't actually have one. And so we want to make sure that we're using the resources and communicating with you in a way that can create peace of mind, take a weight off your shoulders, but we start with that screening process. So you upload a series of 3 different videos, and we guide you through that. And this can be done asynchronously, so you can do this, and then a provider that we have can review this information. So we guide you through that. You upload the videos anywhere up to 3 minutes. If the provider needs more information, they can actually reach out to you through the application, have a conversation with you. And of course, there's a front end where you upload information, fill out forms about your child, but it's not overly extensive. So once the provider reviews the video, they're actually geolocated to where you are, so we can stay within the realm of licensure in the state and virtual care. It's a requirement that has an interesting story in itself. But we geolocate them. You see someone in your state, they review the videos, they fill out a checklist that they have, and that information goes to you when it's complete, and they're able to give you recommendations. So you know what next steps to take. And either it's going to be something where you go to a clinic in your area because they don't have a wait list, but we can actually take you through the next step of doing the diagnosis. So, whether you can bring that to school, there's a lot of ways that benefits you to have that information.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep. And then the diagnosis. So we go into a queue, the same provider can work with you, a different provider can pick you up, and they actually will do either in-home or virtual. So you pick a time off the schedule, they go do that, conduct that, they get the assessment completed. It takes anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to do it, and it's done in your natural environment. You don't have to drive your kid to someplace they're unfamiliar with. And actually, the outcomes of that are better because we actually get to see what their behaviors are in their natural environment versus a synthetic environment, where they can actually freeze and potentially be tired, because sometimes people travel 8 hours to go somewhere to get a diagnosis. So once we're done with that, that information gets uploaded, and we have a psychologist or MD who's overseeing it, and they'll sign off on that information. And at that time, you'll have a medical diagnosis, which, again, that medical diagnosis opens up your insurance benefit. That is huge for basically all insurers. Unfortunately, they were sued to have to do it, but the benefit is there. And you can actually access a lot of different services intensively to get care. So that entire process, we can cut it down to 3 weeks. So,
oh my gosh,
it's a very significant reduction. You go somewhere right now, 6 to 12 months to get your first appointment, and then you have 6 months to get the report. With us, it's 3 weeks. So that's how you engage with the process. We also are connecting with providers in the area, so that when you're done with the diagnosis, you're not just left with like, okay, I have this diagnosis, now what? That we can actually refer you directly back to a service provider that can provide that care for you. And that's just the starting point. There's a lot more we're going to be doing with features in the application, but we tried to keep this as simple as possible, and as easy as possible, and as cost effective, so that it can be done quickly.
Right. Wow. That is just amazing. And so are you doing this across the US or more broadly? What is the, I guess, the geographies that you can cover?
Yeah. So we are a national company. We're based in Seattle, but we are a national company. We have providers in about 27 states right now. And what we've been working on over the last year is actually building a provider database so that we have the bandwidth to support the number of families that need access to this care. And so that's been our goal, is doing that. So once we have every state, we'll open it up. We have to control the environment, because if you're in, I think maybe South Carolina, we don't have a provider in South Carolina. There's a couple of us that can do it, but the availability will be limited to that. So we'll actually give you a code to access it. So it's not like you can't do it. It just may take a little bit longer than that 3 weeks as we build out the company. So we're trying to grow as fast as we can to be able to meet that need, but sometimes there's just not enough time and people and all that to do it all at once.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you've made amazing progress. So what have been the keys to your success so far? Because clearly you've accomplished so much.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for acknowledging that. Because in the process, it's like you're always building, always doing more. And sometimes it can be, you get lost in that and don't take a step back and say, wow, look where we are. So it becomes a little bit of blurring, like, wait a second, how did I get here? But having something you're passionate about is a huge deal, because you're going to hit so many barriers and roadblocks along the way that you have to be able to have the grit to get through those things, because it can take time. Like when we first started talking about this, we had a lot of questions about the reliability and the research on it, which is valid. But over time, as we educated the community, they started to see that it's actually just the provider doing the same thing. We're just creating this conduit for them to be able to do it. So having the resilience to stay consistent with that, and not run away from it or chase something else, has been really important. Having a team of people that are committed as you are is hugely important. We have a small team, but we work very well together. We push each other. We're creative. We're committed, and that is a huge way that you are successful, because it doesn't happen in a silo. You don't achieve it all by yourself. You need people to help you. If you want to get something done, do it yourself. If you want to do something big, do it together. It's very true. And I think that finding a problem and coming up with a solution, like this currently exists, right? So you don't have to create anything new. You've got a market. And it doesn't mean that you can't create a market, but that takes more time. So finding something that has such inefficiencies, and then be able to find a solution where you can cut out or fix that inefficiency is huge, because it makes it easier to get you on your path, and moving quicker, get the ball rolling. I think
Right.
Mark Cuban talked about that with his prescription business. The market's so inefficient that he just said, like, this is a huge opportunity, we got to take it on. The same concept. And you face fear a lot. It's there all the time. It's just about taking that step. And I don't know, sometimes you have to be a little bit naive and think that anything's possible. And if you can do that, like you find that every step you take, you're starting to make a change and make a difference. And that really reinforces, it was worth taking that risk, taking that step.
Right, right. You mentioned roadblocks. I think that we all run into those roadblocks along our path as we're growing our businesses. What have you found are the most effective ways to get through those roadblocks?
Yep. Diversity of people that you either have on your team or you find out in the community is very important. We all have blind spots. There's no way for you to avoid having a blind spot. And so having different perspectives, different viewpoints, and different angles that people are looking at things really helps you keep your mind open, forces you to keep your mind open to find ways around things. You find yourself looking for the perfect answer, and actually there's usually not one. It's what's going to work the best way possible with the resources you have. So having that diversity of thought, having them question and challenge your thought process about how you're creating something, the process itself, or they just have ideas is a big way to do that. You have the passion to know, like when you see an answer, when you find that thing, have the passion to be able to stick it through. Sometimes you don't need to change. You just need to be patient with the process, which in itself can be painful. You can feel like you're on the hamster wheel a bit, but there are things that you just have to stay on course with, and hold that pattern. And that also, it can come from your team. It's reinforcing. And I think that overall, I've had a business coach almost the entire time I've been operating these businesses, and having someone that you're accountable to is very helpful, because we all need to be accountable to someone. Otherwise we find ourselves going off in all different directions. Yeah. I think finding a good coach, finding a good mentor really helps you push through those obstacles, get over those obstacles, because they're outside looking in.
That's amazing advice. Okay, so now that you've had these years of pulling these businesses together, is there anything that if you were to start all over again that you would have done differently, knowing what you know now?
That's a tough question. A lot of, we have hindsight bias. Like we think like, oh, we had the plan, it all worked out, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I've messed up quite a bit. The thing is, when you experience that, the growth is 10 times more than trying to stay ahead of some of these things. Now, you don't want to take too big a risk where it's catastrophic. However, the little risks, the fails that you have, you learn and grow so much. So that's why it's hard for me to say, like, I would do this specific thing differently, because the experiences have resulted in success. I use those see those as opportunities to grow and learn, and that part is a choice. You have to choose to learn and grow from that, and otherwise it will eat you alive. Of course, like, there's some very specific things that I've done where I'm like, I wish I never would have said that. No, don't do that again. So yeah, there are things like that where I'm like, oh wow, if I knew now, for sure. But it's mostly about communication and how that came across, those things. And I wish I would have brought in a business coach sooner, because yeah, the financial piece of business, understanding cash flow, understanding the importance of that, how to inculcate that in your culture as a company. It's the lifeblood of your business, and you can't lose sight of that. You're, as an entrepreneur, you're always looking for bigger, better things, and you can't forget the foundation that you're working on. And so definitely getting a coach sooner, or getting education on the financial aspect of a business.
That's great advice. Okay, so I want to end with one last question, and I'm really interested to hear your perspective on this. And that is, if you were to make one prediction about the future, what would it be?
As it relates to healthcare or in general?
Whatever you want. So that's why I'm interested. So perhaps in care for the families and children that are, I guess, ultimately your customers.
Yeah. I went to a conference a little while ago, so I can't claim this quote, unfortunately. But this person said that it's not going to be AI that takes your job. It's going to be someone who knows how to use AI that will take your job. So I believe that technology is going to, it's already happening. It's happening faster than we can stay on top of. So technology is going to be integrated more in your healthcare. It's going to make it more customizable and so on. The thing is that there's always a human element that has to exist within healthcare. And so, yeah, the clinics might be, I think the clinics will be smaller. I think that you are going to go to the office much less frequently. There still will be that piece. But technology is going to be making those decisions before we know it. And it's going to happen before providers are ready. So I guess be prepared and be ready to be able to be the one on the back end who knows how to use the technology, because that's what's going to happen. It's already happening. And if you can't accept that and embrace that, you're going to be obsolete before you know it. And it's on the flip side, it's also going to improve healthcare overall and your experience with it.
Right. And I guess the huge opportunity for those that embrace it as well, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Well, great. If somebody wanted to learn more about Innovate or ICAN, what should they do?
Yeah, you can look on our websites. You can find us on our websites, i-can.center, which it's not .com, it's .center. That was kind of throws people a little bit. And then innovate.care, and you can find out a little bit more information there, and you can find some contacts to reach out. You can also reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with you and support in any way I can, or just have a discussion. You can reach me at dan@i-can.center. That's also another opportunity. So those are the places you can find out more about us. And we have Instagram and that stuff too.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for making time to be here today, Dan. It's been really an inspiring conversation, and just love what you're doing for these families to really get them the support they need faster.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk and share about what we do here. It's an amazing thing that a lot of people need, and we've accomplished.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I do want to take a moment to thank GuideForce for hosting these sessions. To learn more about GuideForce, you can visit guideforce.com. And we'll see you next time on the Startup Leader Show.